Welcome to ACR Chess. As we head into November, Carlsen is going to be playing Nepo. So I thought let's look at their recent encounter, the one which they played at the recent tournament in Norway, Stavanger. So in this game, Nepo played e5. He is normally a Sicilian Nadov player, but what I'm not sure about was he playing e5 to confuse Carlsen, or is he adapting a much more solid repertoire as part of the World Championship preps and he wanted to test it, or is he misleading Carlsen into believing that this is what he's going to be playing and then Carlsen's workload piles up? But that's what's interesting whenever these two guys meet. In this game, Carlsen was white and he opened with e4 and Nepo e5, knight f3, and we get a Lopez. And this was the first surprise, I think, of the game. For me, I love the Berlin. It's quite an interesting opening with fascinating ideas. So this is O theory in main line, d4, and Carlsen goes for the endgame. In the interviews, he stated that he had been facing some problems here and he wanted to see if he could pose the same for black, because he also plays the Berlin. So after this, we reach this position. This is, I think, is the first key moment when this opening was reintroduced by Kramnik in the World Championship against Kasparov. Kasparov definitely tried this idea, and the drawback of playing rook d1 check is that ideally you want your one rook here and this a rook here on d1. So when you play rook d1 first, you've occupied the square that this rook was going to go into. So eventually you have to do some recorrection of these rooks, and it takes time. But here I can think of why Carlsen would have done this, especially after being surprised, let's say, with e5, like what happened with Nepo now. If you don't play rook e1 and you play other lines, there's other options that black has, which are main lines. Let's say, for instance, you try knight c3, and now suddenly you have to deal with moves like bishop d7, which are strong in the system on their own. By playing rook d1, he rules out any other opening or any other ideas that black could play, and forces him to play king e8. In this position, playing g4 has been proven to be a mistake here. After g4, knight h6, h3, the knight will be stuck out of the game for a while, and white has a significant advantage here. So in the game, Nepo played king e8, and after knight c3, bishop e6. Of course, there's a lot of ideas here. For black, he could play knight e7 to g6, or alternatively, you can also play h6 here. Bishop e6 is just one of the lines that he can play. And knight g5, black goes bishop c8. Your compensation in the Berlin is these two bishops for the damage structure that you have. So giving them up for the knight is completely unreasonable. So he avoids this exchange, and after h3, bishop e7, the knight has to go back. White could make an argument that he's delayed black and is held back his progress, and he still carries on with what he wanted to do anyway. And here, black went h5. Of course, he's got other options. He could play bishop e6 also in this position. He can also play knight h4 here in this position. So he plays rather h5, and now Carlsen repositions his knight. He wants to put it on a better square. On f4, Wade presses on d5 and presses on e6. Nepo just goes knight h4, and after take, bishop takes, Carlsen plays g3. According to the Lichess database, this move g3 is a new move here. Bishop e3 has been played in the Carlsen and Anand games, and another move here is what, f3, which I really don't like because it weakens the dark squares around the king. g3 seems to be very logical. You don't want this bishop staring down your king for a long time, so you chase it away immediately. And king g2 is forced, of course, protecting. And after bishop f5, c3, c5. The idea is that you would like to play other moves, but the knight ends up going to d4, pushing again, then bishop back, so he prevents the knight from going to d4. And now white goes bishop e3, g5. Now the reason why he plays g5 is white wants to play knight f4 to d5. So by playing g5, this denies the knight that square on f4. And now Carlsen has to come with another plan, f3. The idea behind this is to play f3, g3, g4, and then use the g3 square to move the knight to e4. And now Nepo comes with this very active move to prevent this g4 idea. He understands that g4 is desirable for white, therefore he sort of prevents it. But at the same time, when he does this, he played the move g5 to prevent the knight from going to f4. So he has to look for extras that he's gaining when he plays g4, and that's the fact that white's kingside structure is a bit vulnerable at this point. So yes, Carlsen gets this square, but after check takes b6, he prepares for this idea of playing knight d5. With c5 protected, now he can play bishop d8 to protect c7, and then in his own time play c6, redevelops the bishop and brings the rook to the d file. It's always desirable in this setup to exchange one pair of rooks because black's rooks are disconnected. So rook d2, and now he exchanges that one pair of rook, and now goes bishop d8, just avoiding the tempo, gaining ideas. h4, and here g4 was maybe desirable, but if you go g4 in this position after take and the bishop goes to c8, it's going to harass white from here, and this rook is very active on this file. White doesn't want that smoke, so he goes h4, keeping h5 as a target, therefore the rook is tied to protecting it. So after c6, denying the knight the d5 square, knight here. Carlsen's plan is to reposition the knight from e1 to f3 and maybe make it more active. So after check here, knight e1, f3, and after bishop d5, he goes bishop g5. This leads to a few more exchanges. After bishop takes on e7, king takes, and after king e6, king f4, it becomes abundantly clear that after rook g4 check here, he has to contend with a draw. So they agree to a draw here. The point is that if you take on e5, he goes to d7, attacking a7 and f7, and white is temporarily a pawn down, but is going to recover that pawn. Perhaps it might even be threatening more because black's pawns are weak. So they agreed to a draw here. I hope that was instructive. If it was, please follow and like and share. You help us grow and we can do more of this.